Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News. We're bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are Ian Ladyman, the football editor of the Daily Mail, and football writer and broadcaster Henry Winter. Welcome along to you both. We'll hear from you shortly. Let's quickly run you through the back pages as we have them. Well, the Telegraph's main back page image is Mo Salah, whose 50th Champions League goal was enough to ensure Liverpool's perfect start to the league phase. They also carry the story that Manchester United have and still are open to offers for Marcus Rashford, with the piece from Luke stated the club's concerns over the player's lifestyle. Well, Salah and Liverpool feature on the back page of the Daily Mail, as there's some very interesting comments from Pep Guardiola on his future, which the paper suggests leaves the door ajar for the England job. Sticking with Manchester City, the Sun carry quotes from Ruben Dias, plus Aston Villa's late winner moves them a huge step towards the Champions League knockouts. OK, so plenty to get through, and looking at the evening's European action, Champions League, Liverpool's march continues. 6 matches, 6 wins, 18 points after a 1-0 win against Girona. Henry, let's start off with you. I mean, another decisive moment from Mo Salah in this season, and for Liverpool, I mean, it's going so brilliantly well under Arne Slot. 16 wins, 2 draws, I think I make it, since they lost at home to Nottingham Forest. How vital is it, though, that they kind of get this league phase done just to sort of ease the pressure on themselves?
Well, definitely psychologically and in terms of potential fatigue, absolutely. He's rotated a bit. You saw Harvey Elliott come on tonight. Obviously, Mo Salah, again, outstanding. What's that? 12 goals in 16 games. I mean, he's just absolutely relentless in his pursuit of goals and probably pursuit of a new contract. You see it on the front page of the Telegraph pull out there. But it's interesting, if you look in the small print there, Slot's pot shot, he does actually sort of almost challenge his players. He says the performance wasn't quite good enough, even though they seemed pretty much in control. And when you got players like Gravenberch playing so well in midfield, Alisson I thought was outstanding tonight, coming back into goal, made some good saves, and you got Mo Salah. Then obviously they've got the spine of a fantastic team, obviously with Virgil van Dijk as well. So they've got so much going for them. But this is Arne Slot. This is what the really good managers do. They just challenge good players just to keep that momentum.
And what about Mo Salah, Ian, when it comes to 50 Champions League goals? And as far as he's concerned, and as Henry said, obviously desperate to try and get his future sorted. Every goal, every assist is an argument in his favour, isn't it?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I thought we were watching the best of Mo Salah. And watching him last season, I definitely thought we had seen the best of Mo Salah. And I think I was wrong, because I think we're now seeing the best of Mo Salah. He has found another gear this season that I didn't think even he had. Now, whether that's motivated by the desire to win a new contract, whether it's motivated by a desire to impress clubs somewhere else where he could subsequently join, or whether it's about impressing a new manager, or whether it's about being driven on by your own personal standards. Whatever the case, it's probably a mixture of all of that. He's been absolutely phenomenal this season. And the more I watch him, the more I do struggle to imagine a Liverpool without him, and that is not a healthy situation for Liverpool to be in. There is talk now of at least some tentative negotiations over a 2-year extension, and if that is going to happen, I think all Liverpool fans would hope that happens soon, because one of the things that could derail a Liverpool season, injuries and bad luck and bad form being the other things, but one of the things that could derail all that Arne Slot is doing is ongoing uncertainty over Mo Salah. He started to talk about it, probably talking about it a little bit too much, if we're honest, for the club's sake. I think they'd be delighted if they could get that one boxed off as soon as possible.
When it comes to Liverpool looking ahead now, Henry, you look at their next 5 fixtures, it's relatively kind. The one, I suppose, big name team they face is Spurs, but around that, Fulham, Southampton, Leicester, West Ham. What do they really need to focus on? What will they need to make sure they get right to maintain this advantage, both domestically and in Europe?
Keep players fit, keep that rotation going, maybe add another player in January. I mean, they've really only brought in Chiesa. I mean, Arne Slot's just done amazing. I mean, you think of the work that he's done and the improvement in Gakpo, the improvement in Gravenberch. he's tightened the defence even more, and it was a good defence last season. But I think, coming back to your question, David, is echoing what Ian's been alluding to. They've got to address these contract situations. I mean, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and looking at Real Madrid tonight, they could probably do with Trent's energy and passing. And I'd hate to see him leave Liverpool, but you could of the three, with Virgil van Dijk as well and Mo Salah, Trent Alexander-Arnold, because of his age profile, because of Real Madrid's need for a right back and that sort of passing and energy, you could see why a player of Trent Alexander-Arnold's ability would be attractive towards the biggest club in the world. Virgil van Dijk, you would assume, would get done. I mean, Fenway would be mad to lose their leader, probably one of the best, 3-4 central defenders in the world. And Mo Salah, I mean, I got his figures wrong. It's 16 in 22. I mean, he's just been outstanding this season. As Ian says, he'd probably never played better. And you saw the mood that he was in when he came back at the start of the season. I don't think it's any complete coincidence that the opportunity he had to strip his shirt off and just show what amazing conditions that this 32-year-old is in, which probably 18, 19, 20-year-olds would admire, let alone people of my generation. I mean, I just think it's magnificent to see him. He's a model pro. He's box office. He brings in, I'm sure, huge commercial benefits to the club. And if they're looking at trying to replace Mo Salah, who is there around the world as a right winger? Bukayo Saka is not going to leave Arsenal, and he's not quite at Mo Salah's level yet. So I think Ian's completely right. Give him a 2-year deal. And if his form does dip, they can sell him to Saudi and get a few quid back.
Let's talk about Aston Villa, shall we? A very eventful game away in Germany. They beat RB Leipzig by 3-2. Ross Barkley with a deflected shot for the winner. He's only been on the pitch a couple of minutes as well. We mentioned a little bit about Liverpool finishing in that top 8, which they virtually have. They probably almost certainly will. But how much of a boost is this, Ian, for Villa, given that, that would avoid having to play 2 games in February and just eases the pressure again on the squad that Unai Emery has at his disposal?
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. We're already seeing in the Premier League how Villa are struggling to put together the results that they're actually putting together in Europe. I think their domestic results, when they've played in Europe, the immediate games after, they don't tend to do very, very well. It's difficult. Newcastle found it difficult last season in the Champions League and to play well in the Champions League and to play well at home. So Villa are suffering from that point of view, but their results are falling the right side of the line for them in Europe. They won the game late against Bayern at home, didn't they? They've squeezed this one tonight. And you're absolutely right. If they can get themselves qualified, and indeed, if they can get themselves qualified before Christmas, because there's a game in January, towards the back end of January, that if they've already qualified, they'll be able to kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit with that one, and as you say, also avoid the playoff. So I'm sure Villa would have taken playoff. Unai Emery would have taken playoff when the Champions League started, but they've done so much better than maybe people thought, and it would be an extraordinary achievement to get themselves into the next stage by the time we've all taken our Christmas decorations down.
And in terms of sort of managing the energies and trying to give enough players enough minutes and just make sure that strain is shared by the squad, Henry, I wonder, do you think we're going to see more of John Duran, not just as the sub, but ever so often just preferred to Ollie Watkins rather than playing alongside him?
Well, he started at the weekend. He obviously scored today. I mean, I think that's a fantastic option to have. I mean, we thought that John Duran was actually best coming off the bench and causing that sort of chaos and that brilliant finishing. But actually, he's shown he can start as well. But absolutely, they've got options up front. But I think one of their players, certainly of recent weeks, has been John McGinn, who scored tonight. It's a fantastic leader. He's got that tigerish mentality. And, they've just been outstanding. Ross Barkley, what a great story that is. His career was drifting a little bit. He had the injury when he went to Chelsea, rehabilitated himself brilliantly at Luton Town, come into Aston Villa, scored what proved the winner tonight. So, Yeah, I mean, but Unai Emery has just got this sort of Midas touch, particularly in Europe, and probably Villa fans will allow a little bit of drift in the Premier League because they're going on this amazing European adventure. And the last time they had that European venture, certainly at the elite level, it worked out rather well.
It did, yes. It's an adventure that Unai Emery likes going on, isn't it, with his various sides over the last decade or so. Let's just have a quick word on Celtic. 0-0 away to Dinamo Zagreb, Ian. But I think I saw that it was 4 games unbeaten now in Europe's top-tier competition for the first time since the mid-'80s for Celtic. 1 win, 3 draws. What do you make of the way that the Brendan Rodgers is approaching and performing in this competition?
When Brendan went back to Celtic a couple of summers ago, I said and wrote several times that I didn't understand why he'd gone back, because I thought the only thing he could achieve was to achieve what he achieved last time, which was to be dominant domestically in Scotland, but not be successful in Europe. I didn't think that Celtic was set up for it in terms of their squad, in terms of the money. And it looked very much like that last season. But this time round, they have absolutely got it right, or they're halfway to getting it right. Celtic's recent record in the Champions League, going back several seasons, is absolutely terrible, and finally bucked that trend. And you remember they got hammered early in this round. I think in Dortmund, absolutely hammered. It looked as though it would be the same again for Celtic, the same story, and the way that Brendan has galvanised them to come back from that, to get results, to put results together, and to keep winning in the SPL has been terrific. I think most of us doing the jobs that Henry and I do in England would be absolutely thrilled to bits if a Scottish side, and on this occasion Celtic, could get through to the knockout stage of the Champions League. It'd be terrific for Scottish football and terrific for the competition.
Yeah, young boys next at home, then Villa away to finish for Celtic in this league phase of the Champions League. OK, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the back pages, including this in the Times. City are my final club, says Pep Guardiola. We're getting Ian and Henry's thoughts on that in a couple of minutes. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to you at home. Welcome back to Ian Ladyman, football editor of the Daily Mail, and the football writer and broadcaster Henry Winter. OK, let's get to these quotes from Pep Guardiola, and let's have a look at the Times, which says, City are my final club. And well, I'll tell you what, Ian, why don't you take us through this? Just sort of set out the quotes for us. What has he said? What do you make of his comments?
So these are quotes that Pep apparently gave to a Spanish chef on a podcast that was recorded before City got beat 4-0 at home by Tottenham a couple of weeks ago. And the gist of it is that he probably won't manage at another club again, another club. He may manage a country, which obviously opens the door for England, for example. Says that he'll need a sabbatical. He says that he's tired. Says that he needs to have a rest. Says he needs to refresh. And which baffles me a little bit, because this is a guy who's just signed a new contract at Manchester City and has a rebuild on his hands at Manchester City. And these are the quotes of a guy who sounds for all the world as though he wants to be on the beach or the golf course. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that he does, because we know the way that Pep Guardiola is driven. We know how he will be desperate to put City back to where they've been for so long, which is at the top of the English and the European game. But equally, the details and the depth of those quotes is quite something to read from a man like Guardiola, to essentially say that he needs a rest and he's not sure if he's got the energy to build another football club when he's got a rebuild of his own on his hands at City has taken me back a little bit, I have to say.
Yeah, it's interesting, the context you mentioned about it being with a Spanish chef called Dani Garcia. And I guess, had this been a news conference, ahead of a Champions League game or ahead of a Premier League game, you very much doubt that he would say that, because he would know, he's no mug, that someone would actually, press him on that and ask him for more detail. So the context is important, but he's no mug. He knows that this would be, reported anyway, Henry. How do you read it?
Well, it's interesting. It's normally us stirring, and now we've got a Spanish chef. stirring this story. I mean, look, he's managed for 902 games at club level. He's been going for what, 16 years. Obviously, he had the sabbatical when he went off to New York. There is inevitably, he's incredibly well remunerated. He's got everything laid on for him, but he's such an intense individual. You see that on the touchline during games and clearly in training as well. And for me, the concern is less about him and more about the message it sends to his players, because if he is this incredibly intense figure, just sort of exuding this sort of desire to win, this huge hunger, and then he's talking to a Spanish chef about his concerns about sort of fatigue, and he doesn't really want to rebuild again, and City will be his last club. I mean, we've seen it with previous managers at other clubs when they've slightly hinted about sort of retirement or easing up, and the effect that it can have on the dressing room. So that would be more my concern. Look, it'd be a huge loss to the Premier League when Pep goes, because he's not just had an influence on Manchester City in the Premier League. He's had an influence, a very benign influence on the quality of football, the enlightened coaching at so many levels, right down into grassroots. When you got fullbacks stepping into midfield in Sunday League games, you know that he's had an impact. So, I think it's sad. I'm surprised he's said that. Maybe he was in a very relaxed setting and he just felt that he could actually bare his soul. But it's not good news for Manchester City.
Could it potentially, I know we've been here before, guys, but could it potentially be good news for England? And just reading the final quote of Guardiola saying about would a national team appeal, he said, yes, it could be, but it's different. It's not day-to-day or playing every 3 days. That's the back page of your paper, Ian. I just wonder, has that ship sailed, or is there just a timing issue? Because he's got this contract now, Thomas Tuchel is in, but that expires after the World Cup potentially. So again, where do you see this? It's a bit of an awkward fit, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think a ship ever sails when it comes to Pep Guardiola, because if Pep Guardiola is available, then people will want him, whether that's clubs, international federations. Of course he will. He is the outstanding coach of our generation. I'm not sure whether he'd actually be a perfect fit for an international coach, because Guardiola he's a details man. He's a feet on the grass, day to day, intense coach. Whether international football would suit him or not, I don't know. But Tuchel is only in the door for 18 months, as we know. And if things don't go well for England at the next World Cup, it will only be 18 months. Absolutely certain of that. And where will Guardiola go? He's not going to be manager of Spain, because he's Catalan. So that's not going to happen. So if he wants to come again, once he's finished at City and he's had a rest and he wants to come again, of course the English FA would be interested. They'd be very, very interested, just like they were this time round.
OK, let's talk a little bit about Marcus Rashford. It appears that Manchester United are open to the idea of selling him either in the January transfer window or next summer. And this is the Daily Telegraph. Rashford could be sold amid lifestyle concerns. So, obviously we know that he's had some difficult times of late, Henry, at Old Trafford. Is it that he doesn't quite fit for Ruben Amorim? Is it a good chance to sort of cash in? He's still got, plenty of time left on his contract.
So that Telegraph headline, the 2 lines in it, let's take it line by line. Rashford could be sold. I mean, that's a possibility. But who could match his wages? Particularly in January, that is going to be the issue. Amid lifestyle concerns, I mean, he started 2 games for Ruben Amorim and scored 3 goals. I think if you have any sort of window into the soul and the psyche of Marcus Rashford, you know that he is a player who needs support from his manager. And I think Ruben Amorim will challenge him, but will also sort of understand him as a character and actually could bring the best out of him. So I think it'd be a real pity if Marcus Rashford left. You can understand why long term they might go for a Victor Gyökeres. They've obviously got Rasmus Højlund. Effectively, there's only one central striker's position in this sort of 3-4-2-1. I know he's played Rashford sort of slightly deeper as a 10. But I think that central role actually suits him. I know Rashford prefers to sort of playing off the left in a 4-3-3, but they're not going to play that under Amorim. So I think it's a challenge to Marcus Rashford. Why leave the club where he grew up, which he loves, who pay him magnificently? Would he get that sort of financial remuneration elsewhere? He's sitting on a good contract. it's not easy to ease players out. So I just hope that Ruben Amorim realises he's got a very good player there who scored, 30-odd goals the season before last. So there's a fantastic player there. He just needs bringing out of him, coaxing out of him.
OK, so the wages might be a bit of an issue, but what about the potential price tag? If we look at the back page of the Daily Star, well, Ian, it suggests that £45 million could be enough to get Marcus Rashford. So what do you make of that as a figure?
It feels about right to me, actually. I think if we'd have been talking about this 2-3 years ago, it would have been higher. Henry and I have slightly different views on Marcus, and we've talked about this before. My overriding feeling about Marcus Rashford is that I don't think he's quite developed into the player that we thought he was going to develop back in the day. And I'm talking about the very fine margins between being a very, very good player, which is what he is, and an absolutely elite world-class player, which we hoped he would be. And I don't think he has become that. So you ask yourself this question, or I ask myself this question: if Manchester United are to build a team to win the league, is Marcus Rashford in it? And my answer to that would be no. He wouldn't be in it. He's not quite at that level. Would he be in a squad of 20? He might be. Would he be a good bench player in a title-winning team? He probably would. Would he be satisfied with that? Probably not. What's Marcus like when he's not in the team? Is he going to be fully invested? I don't know. There's perhaps some evidence from the last couple of years that maybe suggests that certainly that's a question that Ruben Amorim would need to have answered. So I think there's all kinds of things that swirl around this issue. And I must admit, I sometimes look at Marcus and think to myself, maybe he does need a change of football club.
There's a story in the Times by their chief sports reporter, Martin Ziegler. It's around the confirmation we are expecting tomorrow that FIFA will confirm Saudi Arabia as the host of the 2034 World Cup, even though Norway's football federations say that they will abstain from giving their approval. I mean, effectively, this is kind of one of the worst kept secrets in football, isn't it, Henry? How do you feel about this story? And it says here, look, Gianni Infantino finally delivers his dream, a Saudi World Cup. That word is quite indicative, isn't it?
Well, it's the most one-sided election since Blackadder fielded one candidate in the ad episode of the Dunny and the Wold by-election. There was one voter, and Blackadder's candidate won by 16,000 votes. I mean, it's an absolute joke. I think they're obviously, laughing aside, their moral issues, their workers' rights. There's human rights. There's also the issue of timing. Are the players going to be exhausted? What it's going to mean to the European leagues? I'm sure the Premier League and other European leagues will have a word to say if the season is going to be disrupted again, like in Qatar. Players rushed in, players rushed out. What's that going to do to their workload? So I'm not a big fan, but it's all about the money. Yeah.
It appears to be the case. Well, obviously, FIFA themselves say that they are satisfied that Saudi Arabia will meet every test. They say that their human rights record is medium risk. They have coined it. So, yeah, that's as far as they are concerned. OK, we're going to have to call it a day there. But Henry and Ian, thank you very much indeed for your insights this evening. If you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight, 1:30. The show also available as a podcast, just to download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Join us again on Wednesday night. Our guests will be Charlotte Duncan from The Times, David Ornstein from The Athletic.